This is a mini French lesson on using the French imperative with pronouns. So we're just really going to look at one example, but this example has a few exceptions, so it's pretty interesting. Let's look at this first one. Des œufs. Now that means eggs. Des œufs. What I want you to say in French is buy some, and let's use the to form. So you have to think about two things. Which verb are you going to use? How are you going to form it? How are you going to spell it? And which pronoun are you going to use? So if you have des œufs, tell me which pronoun are you going to use to replace des œufs? Well, when you're using de, any kind of de, before a noun, that's the clue that you can use the pronoun un. So we're going to replace des œufs with the pronoun un. When you're forming commands using pronouns in French, you're going to actually put the pronouns after the verb, and you're going to connect the verb and the pronoun or pronouns together with a hyphen or hyphens, okay? So we know that your pronoun un is going to go after the verb. Now, what we have to think about is which verb to use. So, of course, the verb to buy is acheter, acheter. Now, when you are forming the imperative, remember, there are only three forms. There's the tu form, the vous form, and the nous form. So you begin with the tu form, the present tense tu form of the verb. So tu achètes. Achète is your verb. You don't need to anymore. Get rid of it because now we're making a command. So that leaves you with achète. Okay? Achète. In the tu form, it has an S on it. Now, let's be careful because this verb acheter is an ER verb. And usually you need to remove S from ER verbs when you're giving commands in the tu form. Okay, this is just for ER verbs, right? It's not for RE verbs or, IR verbs, RE verbs, voila. Okay, now you also need to remove S from aller and from verbs like ouvrir when you're giving commands in the tu form, right? So aller, the tu form is va, V-A-S. So we're going to take off the S. Ouvrir. Remember that verbs like ouvrir, offrir, souffrir, for example, even though these verbs end in IR, we're going to treat them like ER verbs because they're conjugated like ER verbs. All right, so we'll take off the S of ouvre, O-U-V-R-E-S, take off the S when giving commands in the tu form. Now let's get back to our example. Des œufs, and then we want to use our verb achète. Achète. Now look, I've got the S in red and I've marked it out, right? Because usually we're not going to use that S in the tu form. Now tell me how this sounds. Des œufs, achète un. Achète un. Sounds a little choppy. It's not flowing very well. Achète un. So, when that happens in French, you always get an exception. When this happens, when the verb is followed by E or on, you will not remove the S when you're using the tu form. Don't you love French? There's always something to make it sound pretty. But listen, up here, I said, do you think this sounds good? Achetons. Maybe you said, no, that's not very nice. Now listen to this. Des œufs, achète-en. Achète-en. So you understand now why we have this exception. It's all about the pronunciation. D'accord? So, voilà, you can follow the link in the description below for this lesson, the full lesson on my blog. Or if you're taking my pronouns course, what I want you to do now is have a look at the sentence structure charts that I've provided. Go ahead and take your quiz and then tackle that set of practice cards because that's what we're going to be working on together during our time on Zoom. Allez, merci, à bientôt.